Ceann Comhairle or Cathaoirleach. I'd just like to echo the sentiments of my colleague, Minister Mitchell O'Connor, in relation to the engineering building in LIT. LIT is a fine establishment in Limerick with I've been there for a number of years, and it's great to see it progressing under this government. I very much welcome the overall budget that was put before us by Paschal O'Donoghue, or Minister O'Donoghue. In particular, I suppose, when I mentioned the area of County Limerick that will benefit from that is the engineering building of LIT, but other such projects that have got a boost, as well as the likes of the Limerick Prison with its redevelopment. Shannon Fines Port Company to share in part of the connectivity funding that's been announced. Troy Studios, obviously the section 486 in relation to tax has been extended to 2024. That has a knock-on effect for the film industry and TV industry in Ireland. I think our arts is something to be celebrated, as always, and we don't utilise it enough. We are starting to learn to utilise it in order to promote our tourism, but also to migrate that over to other areas and fostering communities and helping people, particularly with maybe mental health difficulties as well, is people using those communities, as I've said here before, particularly through sports and through the arts, in order to be able to help their emotional well-being and be able to negate against stigma as well. I think there's a huge crossover there between the arts and mental health, and I will continue to push that. I also welcome that the 800 new Gardaí are also to be recruited. Obviously, rural crime has been an issue that's very much top of the agenda for the past number of years. I live in a very, very rural part of Ireland myself. Obviously, we have seen the closure of Templemore has affected parts of rural Ireland in a major way. That was reopened by the previous Fine Gael government in 2014, and we're now starting to see those Gardaí come through, and I very much welcome this. I've nothing but the utmost respect of what the Gardaí do themselves from their day-to-day jobs. They're very much an integral part of the community, and I want to see that facilitated. I would impress upon the Minister and upon the powers that be that part of these new recruits, that there would be a weighting now starting to be put on rural areas as well as urban areas as well. I'm a huge believer in the community guard. I still think it's very much that type of intelligence, or on-the-ground intelligence, is paramount, because oftentimes it's local people feeding these travelling gangs or these roaming gangs the actual information and intelligence of what's happening on the ground when these crimes do take place, and that's something we have been told of over the last number of years, particularly using that motorway network as well. So we have to pinpoint it there. Going back to the arts, we've an increase to 75 million, an increase that is 7 million. As I said, this feeds into Project 2040 and also the Global Ireland 2025, which is obviously looking at pushing out our footprint in relation to tourism, but also pushing out our footprint in relation to Brexit as well, in attracting other markets, particularly around agriculture, in trying to grow our footprint right throughout Asia, which is, I think, for Ireland still an untapped market. I want to congratulate Minister Creed in relation to the earlier signing of the market on the beef deal with China earlier on this year, and we need to start pushing into markets more like that and use that business that we have there, use that demand and create that demand for Irish produce. Because our produce in the food sector is second to none, and I think we really have a signature story to tell there in relation to our agriculture, particularly to Asia, which do often look to the West for premium type food. Also married with this, I want to talk about the mental health increase in spending, which is 55 million. We're about to complete work as the Mental Health Committee, the Joint Oireachtas Committee on Mental Health, with a final report to be generated on that, I think next week or the week after. So I would ask that this report start to be implemented as soon as possible, particularly around systems, IT systems and waiting lists and referral paths and recruitment. They're kind of the major top lines that we have found in relation to mental health. This also in cognizance with mindfulness and prevention and early intervention. These are just not buzzwords. These need to be actually delivered, and I do recognise that the Ceann Comhairle is very much in situ with this, particularly around mindfulness, and I want to recognise that here today as well. It hasn't gone unnoticed. Moving on to carbon tax. Obviously, there's been a lot of debate and discussion around carbon tax. As was mentioned by the Taoiseach earlier, we need to learn from what happened when you're trying to change behaviour through tax, what happened with water charges, and then trying to bring people along with you That's leadership. That's the real leadership, and this is actually trying to bring the public from all sides. Carbon taxes, no matter whatever political affiliation you are, carbon tax is going to affect us, and carbon is going to affect us down the line in relation to climate change. But it's about bringing. It's not about dividing. It's about bringing everyone together in relation to that. I welcome the formulation of the Climate Change Committee, which has been put into place, which I sit on myself. There's a lot of ongoing discussions there. I'm finding it myself. As someone that doesn't have a background in the area, highly educational. As I said, on the politics side, we need to be able to bring the people with us when we're putting these things in place. We need to have alternatives. We need to invest in the alternatives as well. If we were to put the price of petrol, diesel, coal, whatever you want to call it, today up, the consumption wouldn't have changed. It would have been just harder on somebody, harder on their pockets when they're going out to work, harder on old age pensioners or somebody on disability or on invalidity trying to use coal or solid fuel or oil over the winter period. It wasn't going to work in relation to that. Yes, it would have sent a message. I hear the Greens saying about sending a message, but it wasn't going to practically work. And we've got to study on the practicalities of this for people on the ground. We need to bring the people with us, but we also have to provide the credible alternatives. And I do understand that climate change is upon us, and I do understand it needs to be worked on, but it's how we go about it. I do not want to go back and fall into the trap of what happened with water charges in relation to putting a tax in place to change behaviour. So we have to recognise that and have a bottom-up approach from our electorate, and I think that's going to be a campaign that's incumbent on all of us, regardless of any political divide in relation to the House. Continuing on to agriculture, Ceann Comhairle, obviously there's a number of initiatives in agriculture that were announced that I very much welcome as well. We've announced like staffing and ICT needs on the regulatory side. That always needs to be worked on to make sure that these applications get through as quickly as possible. As I said, the promotion of new markets, the existing stock relief renewed for 3 years to cope with income volatility, and also the extension to farms of income averaging with off-farm trading income as well is very much welcome, and a 53 million to be provided in the capital next year fund for the first round of projects under rural regeneration and the development fund. Obviously we see rural Ireland getting more and more funding being brought in, particularly around e-hubs in small towns. Just to remind the Dáil itself that rural Ireland isn't Limerick City, rural Ireland isn't Cork City, rural Ireland isn't even a big town. Rural Ireland is actually rural Ireland itself, the countryside, the country areas, the small market towns, towns that are 1,100, 1,500, those type of towns where we need to start putting in e-hubs. A lot of those towns now, particularly the fringe areas as well, as a result of the deal that's been done with the government, and they all have broadband access now as well in the circuit around these towns. So I very much welcome all the monies that are starting to be poured into this through Minister Ring's department. And with the Town and Village Renewal Scheme, CLAR funding, Local Improvement Scheme has increased over the last number of years. I see the list now coming down in County Limerick with rural regeneration, with 60 million Brexit support, as I said, 800 Gardaí. Moving on to education, we've 950 special needs assistants also been announced as well, and this is very much welcome. Moving on to corporation tax, I'm very much a believer in holding a 12.5% corporation tax rate. People speak, I hear in the House here all the time about corporation tax and how corporates are getting away with tax, but there's never a mention about the amount of people that are paying tax that are actually employed in these organisations. And I'll go back to my own place in Limerick, the amount of people employed and the downstream industries and the amount of indigenous industries that have come because of people being employed and acquiring the skills in these multinationals is nothing to be snuffed at. And I think we have to be very careful in the message we send out here, particularly around the backdrop of trade tensions globally and also on Brexit. As I said, I very much welcome the loans on Brexit. I think we need to negate against this risk, not only for small to medium enterprises, but also in the agricultural sector. In health, I recognise that we've had a 1.05 billion increase in spending. In relation to waiting lists, I would continue to campaign in relation to a text messaging system that should be there all the time, a highly efficient text messaging system in relation to do not shows for outpatients appointments. I think we can use technology a lot more to our advantage in actually being proactive and being informative and having an integrated communication process in which to inform people on these waiting lists, particularly if they're on a particular period of time that may not be able to come. Similarly to our utilities, that a text message comes 10, 15 days out with a reminder if somebody has to ring or they have to cancel, that is actually prospected and somebody else can be slotted into the place there. Finally, I'd like to just also challenge a debate or challenge a line that was being used in relation to the arts from some opposition parties. I know that in Europe we have the vote on the copyright and the digital single market directive in relation to copyright and content generation, particularly around the arts and artistic development. And I know the artists have been very much campaigning for this, and I know Fine Gael in the area have voted for the progression of this directive, but opposition party Sinn Féin have voted against it. And I've heard today a member, saying that we're not giving enough to the arts, but I don't understand, why one thing has been said in one jurisdiction and something else is happening in another jurisdiction. So clarification around that would be very, very welcome. As I said from the outset, rural Ireland has had its challenges over the past number of years, particularly around recession and immigration, but we're starting to see that influx starting to happen again. As I said, I welcome the increase in sports capital tax, 35 million in relation to tourism generation, and also the 10 million for greenways. There's a greenway in County Limerick, the Great Southern Greenway. I've raised it here before that we need to enhance that and upgrade that, particularly around the dangers of maybe using roads for cyclists on country roads, that we can use these greenways, and that will be done. Thank you.